Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here and your interest. My name is Dave Yost. I'm the Ohio Auditor of State. We are here today to release the interim report on the state audit of school attendance. I'd like to start off with a couple of high-level questions or comments, and then we'll walk through some of the high points of the report, which I trust all of you now have. The first issue is, why would we do an interim report? Frequently, we would not do an interim report in the course of an audit. The audit standards contemplate the need or the occurrence of an interim report. In this particular engagement, there are several complexities, if you will, that make this unique and led us to conclude that we should do that. In the first instance, there's an election coming up, and local school districts have issues on ballot levies that they hope to convince the voters to provide additional resources for them, or to renew a levy, perhaps. Because of the ongoing nature of this audit, there are questions that have been raised, perhaps without merit, in various localities about this particular issue. For the sake of those school districts, we felt that it was necessary to provide as much information as we could, as quickly as we could. Consequently, we're doing this interim report, and we will issue one more interim report on October 23rd, which will include all of the school districts we can possibly get through between now and then. October 23rd is 14 days out from the election, and the policy of this office during my administration has been that we go dark 2 weeks before an election, so as not to unfairly or in a late moment influence an election. In addition, there are discussions going on among members of the legislature, policy makers, think tanks, the governor's administration, about education, about things that are involved with this particular piece of work, our audit. This work will impact the development of a new scorecard, which we're obligated to do, a new grade card system under the flexibility waiver granted by the United States Department of Education. We also want the information as quickly as we're able to gather it and validate it to be available to those decision makers. I want to mention, as a matter of process, that we did provide the relevant sections of this report to individual school districts in advance of this release. They've had a chance to review and provide some initial feedback to us. That's consistent with normal practice in an audit. I would like to caution you that if you are going to talk to your local school district, they've had this in many instances for a day or two. They may not have had an opportunity to fully digest it. As you can see, there's a fair amount of information here. So we expect that we may yet receive some additional feedback, which we will incorporate and consider in our continuing work. There will be a final report issued as part of this process when we have fully completed all of the work. I am hoping that that will be around the first of the year, but given the complexities of this and the unexpected complications that we have run into in this first 100 schools that we did, I don't feel like we can really guarantee that it's going to be by the first of the year. That report will contain a letter of referral that will list school districts for ODE to recalculate, that we feel that they should recalculate scorecards and consider what other actions might be appropriate. We will not be making those determinations until the conclusion of our work, I've spoken with the current senior management at Ohio Department of Education, and that is their preference. That's what the way they'd like us to handle that. I'd like to talk, this is obviously a very sensitive issue. There's been a lot of charged words like cheating and dishonesty associated with it. For the purposes of this interim report today, I want to mention that we have a definition. When we talk about scrubbing, we defined what that is, and we'll get to that momentarily as we walk through the report. But I want to emphasize this. We did not make any determination regarding motivations. We did not answer the question, why? And I would submit to you that that's an unanswerable question as a generality. You know, there's going to be school districts that perhaps have multiple motivations. Motivations belong to individuals, generally not to organizations. And so there may have been persons in some districts that had a plan to deliberately affect the outcome. There may be other explanations or motivations that are entirely benign. There may be self-interest, or there may be professional interest in the decisions that were made that led to these things. This report is designed only to demonstrate the fact of what we found, and I caution you that our report should not be construed to point the finger at anyone to establish wrongdoing, because wrongdoing goes to intent. Now, a few highlight summary things, so you don't have to count them up. There were 100 school buildings tested in 47 districts. There were an additional 28 districts of what we call our 60-day audits. These are school districts that have voluntarily entered a program to do very quick, early audits when the school year ends. We already had staff on the ground when we began doing this work, and so we added these 28 districts, not because there were any additional problems or suspicions there, but because we were in place, we had staff on the ground, and it was convenient to do so, and gave us several secondary effects of being able to examine a competing set of data that had not been selected for any particular indicators. So the total 75 districts were part of this, the audit work to this point. Of those, we found 5 districts that showed evidence of scrubbing under our definition. We'll talk about that shortly. Some other results, we had 21 buildings in 20 districts that we have declared clean. What that means is that we went in and looked at the students that had broken enrollment and had been rolled up to the state, and in all cases, those reasons were documented. There's no reason to suspect scrubbing, and those are in a table in the report. Additionally, we had 28 school districts, 28 buildings in 17 districts, in which we noted errors in the files. In other words, we would go and look at a particular student, and in a 5 or 2 or 4, there were errors in the documentation, but it was not pervasive enough to suggest that there was anything other than human error. I don't know about all of you, but occasionally I will find a piece of paper misplaced in my home office where I put it where it didn't belong. These things can happen, and the fact that an error exists is not in and of itself indication of any problem. So with that, those of you who have the